Hi, I'm Martin. Welcome to Oxford Online English. In this lesson, you can learn about English verb tenses.
Are you confused about simple, perfect, and continuous tenses? Do you know how many verb tenses there are in English? In this lesson, you can get a big picture understanding of English verb tenses. You'll learn what connects English verb forms, which will make it easier for you to learn and understand verb tenses in English.
Let's start with an overview of the topic so that you understand what you're dealing with. Every English verb form has two parts. The first part is the time, past, present, or future. The second part is the aspect, simple, continuous, perfect, or perfect continuous.
So, there are 3 times and 4 aspects. You can combine them in 12 different ways. Pause the video if you want more time to look at the table. Let's do a quick test. Can you recognize these 3 verb forms? I was having dinner this time yesterday. He's been sitting there for hours. Where will you be next week? Do you know the answers? Let's check.
In the first sentence, the time is past and the aspect is continuous. It's past continuous. In the second sentence, the time is present and the aspect is perfect continuous. It's present perfect continuous. In the third sentence, the time is future and the aspect is simple. It's future simple.
You don't need to remember all of this now. What you should remember: all English verb forms are made of these 2 parts, time plus aspect. One more point: different teachers, books, and courses sometimes use different words for these things.
For example, some books use the word progressive instead of continuous. So instead of present continuous, they say present progressive. Other words have the same problem. For example, the words tense and aspect are used in different ways by different people.
Our advice: don't think too much about the words. Focus on the ideas. I understand it can be confusing, but this is really not your problem that people don't use these words consistently. Next, let's talk more about time. I said we're going to talk about past, present, and future, but really, we're mostly going to talk about the future. Why? Why is the future different?
English verbs have past and present forms. For example, be, was, do, did, want, wanted. So, to make a present form, past, just change the present verb to the past verb. Like this: I go shopping once a week. I went shopping once a week. She's running in the park. She was running in the park. We haven't seen it yet. We hadn't seen it yet. It doesn't matter if the aspect is simple, continuous, perfect, or perfect continuous. Using a present or a past verb decides whether the meaning is present or past. That's almost too simple, right? But what about the future?
There are no future verb forms. You can't change the verb to make it future. So, you have to add something before the verb. For example, I'll be waiting for you outside the station. When are you going to tell her? He might join us later. Now you can see why the future is more complicated. There are many things you can add before the verb to give it a future meaning. You saw examples with will, be going to, and might, but there are other possibilities.
It's also very common to use present verb forms with a future meaning, like this. What are you doing this weekend? Class starts at 10. So, talking about the future is more complex. There isn't one way to give a verb a future meaning in English, and there's also a large overlap between the present and the future. What should you remember from all this?
Remember that every verb has only one past form and only one present form, but there are many possible future forms. There isn't one future tense in English. Now, let's talk about aspect. Look at 3 sentences. I went to Rome last year. I go to work by bus. I'll go with you. What are these 3 verb forms?
They're all simple. Past simple, present simple, and future simple. You can see that the past and present simple, you just use the present or past form of the verb without adding anything. For the future simple, you need to add something, like will or going to. In general, simple verb forms describe 2 things. 1, single actions. 2, repeated actions or states.
So, I went to Rome or I'll go with you describe single actions in the past or the future. I go to work by bus describes a repeated action in the present. The present simple can't generally be used to talk about single actions. The present simple generally expresses repeated actions or states.
The past and future simple can be used to talk about single actions, repeated actions, or states. For example, I went to Rome every year until 2012. I'll go with you on Tuesday and Wednesday, but I can't on Thursday. So, what about continuous verb forms?
Let's start with 3 examples. I was eating dinner at 7 o'clock last night. I'm eating a tuna sandwich. This time next week, I'll be eating fresh seafood on an island. These 3 sentences are all continuous. Past continuous, present continuous, and future continuous. Can you see what connects them?
First, all continuous forms use the verb be together with an ing verb. So, to make a continuous form, take the verb be in the past, present, or future, then add your main verb with ing on the end. For example, she was telling me a really interesting story. They aren't helping at all. It'll be getting dark at 5 o'clock. What about the meaning of continuous forms? Can you see what connects these examples?
Continuous forms describe things which are incomplete. Generally, continuous forms are used to talk about one moment in time. So, you say, I was eating dinner at 7 o'clock last night because you're talking about a moment in time, 7 o'clock, and something incomplete. You hadn't finished your dinner at that moment. In the sentence, she was telling me a really interesting story. You're talking about a moment in time when she was in the middle of her story. You use a continuous form because at that moment, she hadn't finished her story. Okay, but what about perfect verb forms?
Again, let's start with some examples. He hadn't finished speaking. She's finished all her homework. We'll have finished everything by Friday. What do you notice?
All perfect tenses use the verb have in the past, present, or future form. After have, you use a past participle to make the perfect form. So, for example, to make the past perfect, you take the past form of have, which is had, and add a past participle. For example, we hadn't thought about it. I had never tried miso soup before.
For the future perfect, take the future form of have, which could be will have, and add a past participle, like this. I'll have finished all my exams by this time next year. What about the meaning of perfect forms? Can you see anything which connects these three sentences?
Perfect verb forms connect 2 points in time. For example, he hadn't finished speaking is past perfect. This connects 2 different times or actions in the past. To understand this, you need a longer sentence with more information. For example, he hadn't finished speaking when everybody started to leave. The perfect form connects the 2 different actions.
This is the best way to think about perfect verb forms. Perfect verb forms connect 2 points in time. How does this work in the present? This is present perfect. What 2 points in time does this connect?
It connects the present and the past. She's finished her homework in the past, before now, and now her homework is done and ready to be checked in the present. What about the future?
This is the future perfect. In this case, it connects the present to a point in the future. When you say, we'll have finished everything by Friday, you mean that you will finish everything sometime between now and Friday. You don't know exactly when you'll finish everything, but you know that it will be somewhere in this period between now and the future.
Finally, let's look at perfect continuous forms. Here are 3 examples to begin. She'd been feeling much better. We've been waiting for ages. By the end of the day, we will have been working without a break for 14 hours. What do you notice?
You can see that perfect continuous forms are a mix of the perfect and the continuous, which is logical, right? They're perfect forms because they use a form of have plus a past participle, which in a perfect continuous verb form is always the same, been. They're continuous forms because they use be plus a main verb with ing. How do you set the time of a perfect continuous form?
You set the time by changing the form of have. Use a past, present, or future form of have plus been plus a verb with ing. Let's practice. Here's a sentence in the present simple. I walk through the forest. Can you change this sentence into the 3 perfect continuous forms, past, present, and future? Pause the video and try it.
Ready? Let's check your answers. I had been walking through the forest. I've been walking through the forest. I will have been walking through the forest. Did you get them right? Next, let's talk about the meaning of perfect continuous forms. Again, the meaning is a combination of the 2 aspects, perfect and continuous. So, the meaning is perfect because these forms connect 2 points in time. I had been walking through the forest when something else happened. For example, I'd been walking through the forest for hours before I realized I was lost. Like you saw before, the perfect aspect is used to connect 2 points in the past. What about the continuous side? What meaning does that add?
It adds the idea of something incomplete or temporary. If you say she'd been feeling much better, this suggests she was feeling ill either before or after she was feeling better. If you say we've been waiting for ages, you mean that you still haven't got what you came for. The action, waiting, isn't complete. If you say by the end of the day we will have been working without a break for 14 hours, you mean that your work still won't be finished at the end of the day. The past and future perfect continuous forms are rare, but you still need them sometimes.
Okay, so now you've seen an overview of all the English verb forms. First of all, remember that this lesson is meant to give you the big picture. You've seen what connects different English verb tenses and how verb forms are different from each other.
However, you've seen the most general connections and differences. This can help you to understand English verb forms, but remember that every English verb has its own specific uses and meanings.
Want more practice with this topic? Make sure you check out the full version of this lesson on our website. It includes a quiz to help you review and practice what you've learned in this class.
That's all from us. Thanks for watching.
See you next time.